Hey y'all, it's Laura and welcome back to day 18 of my Scraptember video a day marathon. This is a little catch-up video because I'm a couple behind, but after today we should be caught up. This is a collaboration with the Scrappy Sisters and Christy's Beautiful Life with special guests Rachel Lowe and Brittany Nicole, along with a lovely group of ladies joining in every single day and all linked in the description box below. Now today's layout uses a sketch from HipKit Club, and this one was a bit tricky for me actually. I don't do a lot of mixed media layouts, as y'all may know, but the ones that I do, this black stripe is something I've done quite a bit before in the past. But what really threw me with this one was the L shape that they created with these black stripes and then this sprinkling down the left side. It's an interesting design. It's just not something that I would normally go for. So I had a little bit of trouble with it at first. I think I pulled it off in the end, but it's probably not one that I would go for super often. My general preference for using this black stripe background is to do a diagonal sprinkling instead of an L shape. And I find that that diagonal flow across the linear painty stripes works a whole lot better visually when you have 3x4 photos. Now in the sketch they're using a small square photo, but it really kind of disappears on the sketch even. And I prefer my photos to really stand out. And so perhaps that's why is that diagonal flow helps the photos to land in the middle, which helps them to be the focus of the layout. Now for this particular layout, I'm going to be using the Bella Boulevard Chloe collection, but not a whole lot of the icons. I have fussy cut a whole bunch of the florals from one of the pattern papers, and yes, even the teeny tiny ones, because I love those for scattering. So essentially for this design, you need some black stripes, painty stripes in the background. It doesn't have to be black, it can be whatever color you like. I chose black so it would be high contrast with these bright colors, and so they'd stand out, and then add a scattering down your left side. Again, I think this is a very simple design, and it's something you could really play with. I just generally prefer to do it on a diagonal, but I did follow it on this L-shaped design just to try it out, see what I thought, because you don't know until you experiment, until you try it out, until you give a new style a go, you won't know if it works for you or not. And perhaps if I was only scrapping one small photo, it would have worked a little bit better, but I felt like having two photos, it sort of threw it off with only 3 stripes. And so I ended up going with 4 stripes so that they would actually stand out in the background. Otherwise, my photos would largely have covered them up. And I thought that wasn't really the point. So I went ahead and made sure to use more stripes. I would also recommend maybe trying this with some thinner stripes, and that might work a little bit better because you'd be able to see more of the stripes in the background. But generally speaking, this sort of a simple mixed media background isn't normally my go-to because I love pattern paper and I love the opportunity to use pattern paper in my backgrounds. So to create the scattering along the left side, I'm starting with the larger florals first and then filling in with smaller and smaller pieces until I get down to the teeny tiny florals, and those are just filling in the gaps. Now initially I put in quite a few and then I come back and add more because I felt like there was just so many big gaps in there that it just didn't feel like a cohesive vertical line. And that's really what I wanted, was a nice strong vertical line, a base on which to rest my photos. And so I do come back and add more of these little florals at the end, and somehow I've ended up with way too many fussy cut pieces from this collection and not enough paper. Go figure. Don't know how that happened, and I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with it, but at the moment I'm just doing layouts like this that don't require a lot of pattern paper, but they use up a lot of these little fussy cut scattering pieces. So I may just do several more of these and just try to make a pretty good dent in my fussy cut leftovers. Now, one thing I do want to mention about this particular layout is the photos. The photos are interesting. The first photo there on the left is a fairly current photo from me from 2019. And the one on the right is using a face app. And what this face app does is it ages you, or it kind of assumes how you will age. And I thought that was a really cool idea. And so I'm scrapping my current-ish self and what supposedly I will look like in the future. And I thought that'd be really cool to document and then come back later to look at and see how accurate it was. So I'm going to use the left photo a little higher and more square with my vertical line of scattering, and then the right one slightly on an angle, just for a little bit of visual interest. I'm going to come in with a few of the little bits and pieces that are left over from this collection, of which there are not much. There's hardly any embellishments left. It's just these fussy cut pieces. Adding in a very small title here underneath of my photo and kind of connecting the two photos together. And it's going to be Age Gap, which I thought was a clever title because I am in fact documenting the idea of how I would age in time. What's really funny is the right-hand photo actually reminds me a little bit of one of my grandmas. And so it would be kind of funny if I did age that much like her. It's kind of funny to me to think that I actually do look quite a bit like her, which I did not realize. So adding this really small title in white on that black painty stripe really has a nice high contrast effect, and I really like how that came out. I am going to come in with some pretty heavy detail work on this particular layout because there's really not any strong, large embellishments. And I think that's what initially threw me, is there aren't any really big embellishments. There's like 2 larger flowers and that's it. And I'm just not used to this type of minimalist scrapbooking, but it's always interesting to me to try it out and see how it goes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it just ends up a big mess, and that's okay too, because you learned something. So here I am bringing in these little fussy cut circles. I'm going to add some of these in with the scattering bits as well. Then I'll bring back the florals from before and add some of those tiny florals in to fill in the gaps because I felt like there just wasn't a big enough presence from this vertical line and it needed more. Something I'm doing a little bit differently on this layout is I did my splattering earlier. I brought in my Heidi Swapp Color Shine and splattered around those flowers on the left side, all along that left side of the page before I adhered my photos because I knew how close my photos were going to be to that cluster of embellishments and was going to try to avoid getting mist on them. So that worked out fairly well. Bringing in my T-square ruler and a white pen, which didn't work great, and it was because my pen was running out. So I end up ditching it at some point, grabbing a new pen and being able to write and draw these lines much easier later on. But I try really hard to make this pen work. And normally with this silicone mat from Fiskars, if I write on the black part there on the edges, quite often that will make my pen work. And it did temporarily enough to get these 3 lines that I wanted for journaling, but I end up tossing this pen and going ahead and getting a new one because I don't like fighting with my tools. I'm just not a fan of fighting with my tools. Bringing in a black pen with my T-square ruler, I'm going to create an outside edge, a little border on the outside. I do this most often when I'm creating on a white cardstock background. And this particular one isn't even fully white because it is Vicki Boutin's foundation paper, which is perfectly made for mixed media. It doesn't bow and crinkle up as much as regular cardstock does. It's very nice, heavyweight, and it's smooth, which is hard to get in a lot of mixed media papers, and I love the smooth cardstock. So by drawing in this kind of a sketchy border, I get an outline of sorts, but not having to bring in more cardstock and not having to add more weight to an already heavy layout with that thick mixed media paper as a base. So now that I'm bringing in more of these tiny little florals, I'm going to again go in and fill in gaps because I just kept feeling like this vertical line wasn't strong enough. If I'm going to go for an L shape, I'm going to go all in. I'm not going to go part of the way in. I want to go all in. So I'm bringing in more of the tiniest florals there to add in here, there, and everywhere to fill in the gaps. And in the end, I do really like it. It's just not something that I probably would lean on very often as a go-to design. And if you don't know what I mean by go-to design, I have a whole series of videos talking about the designs that are my fallbacks. So the ones that I always go to and always use because they work. And they work for me because they're easy. They're easy to use. They're versatile for a number of different types of photos and collections, and I just find them absolutely the best to go for. And there's 15 different designs, and they're all in the go-to playlist, and I'll try to link that at the end of the video for you guys so you can find it easily. Another thing I did a little bit differently with this particular layout is I used 3 different shades of Nouveau on this page. I started out with my gold, which as you can see was right at the end of its life. Ended up tossing that bottle finally and starting a new one. Brought in the white just for the black line, so just dotting around the florals on the black line using the white, and then I'll come in with the black and dot around the white part of the florals. And this creates such a cool effect in the background in person. It's kind of hard to see on video, but I think you can see it in the still images at the end, and it is such a fun effect. I hope this helps. I hope you enjoyed this one, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, bye y'all.